without spin.
Out of 116 million working-age Nigerians, 35.5 million are employed full-time. That's 30%.
I give you the context.
I give you the history.
I fight fake news with facts.
Kayode. No, Kayode, I will let you talk. Kayode, I will let you talk if you let me talk. Kayode.
That's why more and more Lagosians are tuning in.
500,000 Lagosians.
720,000.
970,000.
Over 1 million Lagosians. They know that if you give me your afternoon, I will give you hard facts.
Well done, Sandra, on all you do, going beyond the headlines and focusing on the facts.
I am Sandra Ezekwesili, and these are your hard facts.
Hello, Lagos. Good afternoon. I am Sandra Ezekwesili, and these are your hard facts. It's 6 minutes past 3. First hard fact of the day: 8 new COVID confirmations yesterday. Yes, you heard me. 8. None of those cases are from here in Lagos. It looks like we've beat this thing, but still take your precautions. Keep wearing your mask. I was at an event yesterday organized by the Bank of Industry. I moderated a panel for the Bank of Industry, and I was really happy about the number of people who were at this event and who were wearing their masks from the beginning to the end. Now, of course, it was a lot of government officials, but if your government officials are wearing their masks, that should tell you something, right, as an ordinary citizen. So there were lots of governors' wives there, including the Lagos State governor's wife. And Edo State governor's wife as well. Several ministers in attendance as well. There are also lots of heads of MDAs and heads of really industry. it is a Bank of Industry after all. And all of these people, really wealthy, really powerful, were wearing their masks, so if they care about their health, and I'm sure most of them in attendance were triple vaxxed. Triple vaxxed means that they've taken 3 doses of the vaccinations available. If they care so much about their own lives and they're doing a lot to protect themselves, even though the cases have gone down to as little as 8, I hope that tells you that you should take your own life seriously and do things to protect yourself and protect the people you care about. But anyways, I had a great time at the Bank of Industries event. I thank them so much for inviting me. Thank them for putting together that event. It was a very prestigious event. I thank them for having me moderate the panel. They had me moderate. And I also thank Lani, drawlani.com. They gave me a complimentary bag. Oh, I was going to bring that bag in and show it to you guys on the camera. But unfortunately, I left the bag in another studio. So on Monday, when I come into the studio, somebody remind me, please, so that I can show you the bag. I'll share it on my social media anyway. My social media is Sandra Ezekwesili, everywhere, Sandra Ezekwesili. So the owner of the brand essentially walked up to me and she said, Sandra, I'm a huge fan. I like what you do. Thank you for doing what you do. And I just want to appreciate you with this bag. And it's a gorgeous bag. I'm really grateful. I don't see myself as a celeb. So when people do that for me, I'm always like, wow, I'm really a celeb. Ooh. And then I met the most amazing person. She's a head of customer service at the Bank of Industry. Her name is Marian Hart. Marian was such a delight. She's such a delightful person. She listens to the show all the time, listens to all the shows on the station all the time, was quoting me to me. She kept saying, Kayode, let me talk. It was nice to meet her. She made sure I had a great time at the event yesterday. She was really lovely, really amazing, really kind. I just want to give her a special shout out. Marian, thank you so much for giving me a great time yesterday. So that's how my day went yesterday. I've still got a second hard fact for you. It's 3 days. Can you believe it, Lagos? It's 3 days until the return of I Beg to Differ. My God.
Good day, honorable judges, my moderator, timekeeper, my fellow co-debater. My name is Samrita Kaushik. I'm 13 years old.
The auditions are over. Now it's time to debate.
The whole concept of democracy is comments hearing
The I Beg to Differ debate tournament returns to your radio on Monday, March 7th.
I strongly concur that the barbaric and outdated
16 secondary school students made the cut.
For example, if you look at Cameroon, what's happening right now, so there's
But now, to stay in the game, they'll have to go head to head.
the full meaning of a job means joining other businesses. But how?
No second chances, win or go home.
What if AI is the end of the world? What if? What if it will cause the end of the world?
Until we have one winner, 1 million naira. Join me, Sandra Ezekwesili, my panel of judges, and my great debaters, Mondays to Thursdays, live at 4 p.m. on 99.3 Nigeria Info. And catch the replay the next day from 4 p.m. on Wazobia Max TV, showing on DSTV Go TV, Star Times, and on UHF Channel 57.
This tournament is brought to you in partnership with Haystack, supported by Printivo.
Thank you so much to Paystack for doing this with us and for us. We really, really appreciate it. And thank you to Printivo. Printivo is giving the children amazing souvenirs for being a part of the I Beg to Differ tournament. If you go to my Twitter right now, Ezekwesili, or even my Facebook, Sandra Ezekwesili, you'll see a video of the magic mug that Printivo gave them. So it changes color. When it's cold, it has one color. When you pour hot water into the mug, like tea or coffee or whatever, it changes color. It's so beautiful. I really love it. I want to find out. On one hand, I want to find out the science behind it, but on the other hand, I'm like, no, I want to like preserve the magic. It's making like I feel like a child every time. Like I've watched the video several times. It's so awesome. My Twitter is Ezekwesili. My Facebook is Sandra Ezekwesili. So you see the mug that Printivo is giving us as part of their support for the I Beg to Differ Students Debate Tournament. Printivo prints everything. If you want them to print a human being for you, they'll print a human being for you. Check them out on printivo.com. So from Monday to Thursday next week, it's the round of 16, 2 debaters per day from 4 to 5 right here on Hard Facts. Did you catch the playoff debate on Wednesday? If you didn't catch it, you can actually listen on our website, nigeriainfo.fm. That's our website. Deborah Pamzat won that round. She'll be back on Monday to debate against our number 1 seed. So don't miss it. 1 million Lagosians cannot be wrong. Thank you for listening to Hard Facts. I have a great show for you. It's a big one because there's still one big global story. You know that every Friday, we let Nigerian stories rest because there's so much happening in other parts of the world, right? And so we just focus on those stories from other parts of the world. And the biggest story in the world right now is Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Chief Andy Obofore is back in the studio with me, and he'll be with me for the rest of this hour. From 4 o'clock, Agogo will be here with Public Square. After that, Music and Moments with Ifeanyi and Sam. There's news and sports and everything in between coming your way at the top of each hour, every hour. But let's get started with today's big one, Russia-Ukraine War Edition. Like I said, I'm Sandra Ezekwesili, Lagos, and these are your hard facts.
The Big Three Global Edition on Hard Facts.
How has the federal government handled the evacuation of Nigerians from Ukraine? Are the sanctions against against Russia going too far? The sanctions, are they going too far? Or are they not going far enough? And did nuclear powers just become checkable? Last week when we were having this conversation, my guest said, well, they can't be checked. And today, one of the guests is back in the studio, and I'm wondering if he has changed his mind and that nuclear powers can in fact be checked. It's the big one, Russia-Ukraine War Edition, Lagos. Let's talk. Today is the day that we let Nigeria rest. I always say that, and instead we take on the biggest stories from around the world. And Russia's war against Ukraine is still the biggest story on earth. It's into its second week now. but it hasn't been as one-sided as it looked like it would be. The Ukrainians are fighting back. They're getting lots of help from their Western neighbors, including the EU and NATO. And the member nations of those groups. They're also imposing sanctions on Russia. So new unprecedented sanctions like removal of its institutions from the global payment system, for example. People did not expect that was going to happen, or they expected that, these countries were going to wait until last minute to make that happen, to get that done. But here we are. And of course, Russia isn't taking this lying down, and we've even gotten a threat from them involving nuclear strikes. So today we're going to make sense. We'll try to make sense of the whole situation. Maybe read some tea leaves to figure out what could happen next. My guest is a product management executive in venture capital, Chief Andy Oboforibo. Welcome back to Hard Facts.
Thanks for having me back, Sandra.
Let's start closer to home, Chief. The Foreign Affairs Ministry is coordinating the evacuation of Nigerians from Ukraine to countries like Romania and Hungary. In fact, we heard this morning that Max Air has landed with the first people who were evacuated. How would you assess their performance?
I mean, given the circumstances and given the cards that they had to play, I think the federal government has done fairly well.
Okay.
It's not often I get to praise the federal government, but this is one of those situations.
Right.
They've handled it as well as you could expect. So you had a war zone, I think the one thing you can fault them about is saying, well, why didn't they start evacuating people sooner before, the actual first shot was fired, when it was clear what was happening? But, I mean, lots of people all over the world didn't expect the invasion. Many people kept saying, Putin is bluffing. So I can even give them a pass on that. It's not as if our intelligence agencies are world class. So sure, they didn't realize. So now the war starts. It's very difficult to get people out of a war zone, especially if there's no ceasefire or no humanitarian corridor set down, as it was at the very beginning. Yet, in spite of that, what they were able to do was, look, we're coordinating, we're talking to Nigerians in Ukraine, giving them information about how to get to the border, and just saying, please, just get to the border as best you can, and then we will help you for the rest of it. Stuff came up. We started hearing about neighboring countries not allowing Nigerians through, even though that was a violation of international law. And, Jeffrey Onyema stepped up. The foreign minister stepped up and said, look, this shouldn't be happening. This isn't right. And he spoke, and we got Hungary and Romania to allow visa-free entry to our citizens. And we didn't just let them just cross the border and find their way. Again, as best they could, they arranged transportation and accommodation. So, and now the airlifts. Please, a big shout out to Max Air and to Air Peace for, doing the patriotic thing and stepping up. So all told, it could be better, sure. But, I mean, it would be very wrong, to be churlish, not to give them their credit here.
Not to give them their credit. We've also gotten a grudging acknowledgement from the Ukrainian government that Africans were being mistreated. I mean, last week when we talked about it, we saw footage after footage of what Africans were going through, Nigerians were going through. We saw further reports during the week after our conversation last week that some of those people were dying on the streets from hypothermia. They were dying from cold weather because it's still winter, it's still snowing. So they were dying from exposure to the elements. So a lot of them were starving, a lot of them freezing to death. But we have gotten acknowledgement from the Ukrainian government that Africans were being mistreated. And finally, the international media is picking up the story. So that's good. It's very interesting how at first it was all being downplayed. But because Africans, especially Nigerians, kept shouting online, they finally had to fess up. They finally had to look into that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is now one of those situations, like, we have to look at our government and tell them, you see your life. Because the thing is that the government for once and the people, Nigerian government and Nigerian people were on the same side for once, shouting about the same thing. But it was the power of the internet, power of social media, especially Twitter, that amplified the voice of Nigerians, calling attention to what was happening, because if it was NTA or Nigeria Info, we don't have correspondents in Kiev, right? So if it was left to the foreign, especially Western media, who were there on ground to report the plight of Nigerians, they would have just turned a blind eye. Why? Because they want to paint, they don't want anything that tampers with the narrative that Ukraine is the victim, Russia is the aggressor. So, people don't do nuance. So people don't understand that, okay, Russia could be wrongly invading Ukraine, and at the same time, Ukraine is wrongly maltreating Africans and Nigerians.
Right.
So to avoid that, the Western press will just downplay that. So if we didn't have Twitter getting these videos of Nigerians and Ghanaians and everybody out there, there would have been nothing for Jeffrey Onyema to amplify, and would have still been where maybe the Ukrainians would never have acknowledged it till now. So we see the power of social media to counter that. So next time that somebody wants to, ban Twitter and somebody wants to call in and say, hey, Sandra, is true, excesses, people are going too far, my freedom store where your freedom start. Remember today that Twitter saved the lives of Nigerians in Ukraine. And it could be your life tomorrow, or the life of your person in Malaysia or wherever it is.
Yeah. And that brings us very nicely to the role of propaganda in this war. I like that you went in the direction of, people are very binary in their thinking. It's very difficult to have very nuanced conversation with the average person. Yeah. And so you have to tell them A is A, B is B, But, when it comes to war, when it comes to most things, really, propaganda is at play. Whether it's politics, whether it's like whatever the politics is, there's propaganda at play. The Ukrainians appear to have put together a very sharp public relations machinery here. While the Russians seem like they're struggling badly with the narrative, at least on Twitter, and that's ironic because for the past 6 years or so, we've been hearing about the Russian government running all these bot farms and troll farms and creating this very well-oiled propaganda machine, So how come the Ukrainians are beating them at their own game this time?
Yeah, I think first of all, I think shout out to a good friend of mine, Kingsley Ewetuya. He put it very interestingly on Twitter. He said that the thing with that Russia is like that SS3 senior that has been terrorizing everybody in the boarding house for years, weeks, months, years, and finally one day, everybody has been planning for that person, and one day that guy just passed the wrong place and just went to the wrong place at the wrong time, and all those juniors are there, and bam, it's open season on him. So that's kind of what has happened to Russia now. The countries with some of the largest media, both formal media, traditional media, and social media reach in the world, have been licking their wounds about Russia. So you have the Americans who believe Russia interfered actively in the last two general elections. You have the British who believe that Russia interfered in Brexit, in the Brexit campaign. Okay. You have so you have
so everybody they wait
Russia, especially on this media side. So there's been all of that, right, coming up. Then there's also the mere fact that it's basically like it's very hard to spin some things. Okay, like two fighting is easy to spin, but a country is on their own. You have a problem with them. Let's even say that every single thing Russia says about the Ukraine is true, right? So all Russia's grievances are correct. Invasion is still not the way you're supposed to go. You're supposed to go to the UN and report them and all of that. In fact, and in the specific case of Ukraine and Russia, of the issues that brought them here to a head, that they had a peace deal in 2014, right? And under that peace deal, which was brokered by the OSCE, the Organization for Security in Europe, they are basically guarantors of that peace. So really, if Russia is saying that Ukraine is not doing the things that they are supposed to be doing in the Crimea based on that, etc., there is the people that sat down with you and signed the peace deal, you first go there before you go. But none of that was done. Instead, you are now invading another country, bombing them into the Stone Age, rolling your tanks through there. It's very difficult to win that PR war. People say, oh, America got away with it. America got away with it because nobody could go and fight a war with America. But America took a PR beating. America took a massive PR beating, which we're still feeling till now. I'm talking about the Iraq War. So that's why till today, people are calling America a hypocrite for coming to talk against Russia. That shows you that you don't go into another country, invade another country, and expect to win the PR battle.
It's interesting that you raised that point about America. I was having a conversation with one of my drivers, a Bolt driver who brought me to work one time about this Russia-Ukraine situation. And he said something that I've heard quite a number of Nigerians repeat. You know, he said, oh, the media is very Western. There's an agenda to make Russia the bad guy. The problem is that, people are not being very honest. Would America allow, an enemy, for instance, set up in Mexico that is essentially America's backyard?
Right.
Have you heard that sentiment?
I hear that sentiment all the time. And this is my simple question. When somebody says, will America allow Russia to bring missiles into Mexico? I say no, but has America brought missiles into Ukraine?
Hold on. Let's take a break. When we come back from this break,
the answer is no.
You keep going. You keep going, with that question. You're listening to Hard Facts on 99.3 Nigeria Info. Every Friday from 3 to 4, we let Nigeria rest. We talk about what's happening in other parts of the world. Today, it's Russia's invasion of Ukraine. I'm Sandra Ezekwesili. This is Hard Facts on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
You are listening to your number one station for talk.
99.3 Nigeria Info.
99.3 Nigeria Info.
This Easter, something.
Today, it's Big Three Global every Friday from 4 o'clock. Global stories featuring right here on 99.3 Nigeria Info. I'm Sandra Ezekwesili. It's 3:29. I've got Chief Andy Oboforibo on the show with us. And Chief Oboforibo is talking to us about the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Chief is a product management executive with a venture capital firm. And, he's also quite knowledgeable about this invasion, and he's quite the historian. unofficially. And that's why he's talking with me about this. He's having a conversation with me about this. And before the break, we were talking about people who say that Western media is skewed in their reporting of this conflict, that people are being hypocritical about this, that if this were America, for instance, they were doing the exact same thing that America is doing. And you were asking before the break, Chief, you said, well, has America, has America invaded Russia? No.
I asked, when they make the Mexico analogy, I'm asking if it holds in this case.
Yeah.
Because people say if Russia were to put missiles and weapon systems in Mexico, America would invade.
Right.
So I'm saying, well, even if we say that that's true, has America put missiles and weapon systems in Ukraine? No, they haven't. So it's not the same case. So why are you using that Mexico hypothetical as a justification for what Russia is now doing in Ukraine? There are no American weapon systems in Ukraine. America did not give Ukraine weapons. There are no American soldiers in Ukraine. Ukraine is not a member of NATO. So what people are saying is, if Russia cannot allow Ukraine to join NATO, so now
an independent country.
Might
I add.
And the funny thing about it is, it's the same Nigerians who oftentimes talk about self-determination are the ones that are saying this. You want self-determination, and that's part of the sentiment. There's a lot of pro-Russia sentiment among pro-Biafra Nigerians. I've noticed that.
Okay.
And that's in part because the feeling is that because the Russian propaganda is that they are fighting for the self-determination of ethnic Russians in the Crimea. So a lot of that has gone to now start creating this support. Yes, Putin, this is the kind of thing that we would have wanted. But everybody only ever sees power when power is on their side. And then the Nigerians in general tend to just love shows of power. And everybody assumes that they will be the Russians, not that they will be the Ukrainians. But I'm a Nigerian. I understand that my country is a third or fourth rate power in the world. And so I understand that eventually we might get to one day where some first or second rate power decides for whatever reason to take pieces of my country or to invade my country. And is this the precedent I want to set, that if a country wakes up one day and decides that they want to come and take another country because of grievances, that it should be allowed to happen because another country was also a hypocrite? Like, do we have sense? I mean, we have to just look at this thing objectively. But the thing with Nigerians is oftentimes when we analyze these things, we tend to be sentimental and we try to turn it into a good versus evil battle. It's not a good versus evil battle,
as Ukraine has shown.
Yeah, it's a question of what would we want the world to look like? Do we want the world to look like a place where if you are just the stronger country, then you're going to just go and do whatever you want? Especially as black people, Africans, from a third or fourth rate world power like Nigeria, where, I mean, in my lifetime, Cameroon walked over and took a piece of Nigeria and went away and nothing happened. Like, is that really what we want? Nigerians are here complaining every day that people from Niger Republic are crossing our borders and taking over our country. But you're seeing it happening in another country and you say, yes, let it happen to them, to these people, these Ukrainians, because we don't like the Americans. Make it make sense. Okay. You don't have to like the Americans, but let's stand for what's right or wrong.
But at the end of the day, war isn't won with propaganda. You still need to do business on the ground.
Oh, yes.
The Russians are advancing well into Ukraine, but lots of military analysts on all sides are saying that their progress is much slower than expected. What are some of the issues there? How can they be explained?
Well, there's strategic issues, then there's, organizational issues, corruption, and there's also just, Ukraine being a bit stronger than people expected. So on strategic, but I think ultimately it still advantage Russia. But the Russian forces are moving much slower than people thought, in part because the Russians didn't come for like a blitzkrieg. They didn't come for like a full-scale ground offensive,
right?
Where you can normally, like ever since World War II, the Germans taught us that in the modern era of armored warfare, if you're coming to invade a hostile land, you send your forces in waves,
right?
At least two, preferably 3 or 4.
Right.
The first wave comes and moves very quickly and wipes out everything in front of it, with tanks and everything, and moves and just goes, but doesn't stop to hold ground. Now, because of that, it will miss a lot of stuff, right? So suddenly, that first wave has passed territory and has left behind some people, like Ukrainians in this case. There's now supposed to be a second wave that comes to, and please forgive the very flippant words, but these are the military words, mop up those people, those resistant people. But because the Russians didn't do that, they came in with only one major wave, because I think they underestimated the Ukrainians.
Yes.
That first wave passed relatively successfully at first, but it left behind lots of Ukrainians who now popped up and started fighting a resistance fight. And bear in mind that these Ukrainians have been fighting the Russians since 2014, or since before 2014, in Crimea and so forth. So the Ukrainians have lots of battle-hardened people, and they've been planning for this invasion, more or less. And now that they're getting they're getting weapons, they have they have the Javelin anti-tank missiles, which they are using very effectively against the Russians. So that's a problem. But even with all this, the Russians should have still made this thing much easier. The other problem the Russians have is massive corruption, which we're seeing, which is affecting their ability to fight war. So we've seen that lots of breakdowns of Russian vehicles, both tanks, armored personnel carriers, all of them are breaking down. A lot of tire wear out. Tires are wearing out and falling off the rims. And why is that happening? Because those tires have not been rotated for years. And why have those tires not been rotated for years? Because the money to organize that car maintenance has not been going down because of corruption within the Russian military. And this has been a big problem. There was a very massive reform movement of the Russian military some years ago, and then the reformer guy who was doing that in the Russian military got kicked out because he was stepping on too many toes. So what we're seeing here is a power coming out to fight that maybe is a bit heavier than their normal fighting weight, and that's what is part of what is slowing them down. And then also there's just also the issue of morale, psychology. The Russian army,
hearing that a lot of the army recruits were conscripted.
Yeah, they're conscripts, meaning that they didn't volunteer to be soldiers. They were conscripted. Come draft, we're coming to go and fight. Or come to join the army. And even then, they didn't even realize they were going to go and fight.
Yeah,
they thought they were going to do
training.
exercises.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a whole thing that's happening there within Russia. Then contrast that with the Ukrainians who are fighting for their lives. The guy who is fighting on his home soil is always more it's more of a thing. So all these things add up. It's still advantage Russia, but and then also let's also not forget the fact that the Russians didn't do the normal modern thing like the Americans did in Iraq, which is start out with air fights. You use air raids to destroy defensive positions, use missiles. America goes maybe 2 weeks of air war before the first boot hits the ground. They did that in the Gulf War, they did that in the Iraq War, they did that in Afghanistan to an extent. So that has also come to be what we expect from a superpower when they come to fight. In fact, the Americans did such a good job of it in the Gulf War. By the time their soldiers and their tanks first started coming in, the Iraqis were surrendering without a fight. But here, the Russians have, and that's again because of logistic issues, they just did not bring the air power the way they should.
Lagos, join the conversation. Give us a call on 0700-993-993-993. I've got Chief Andy on the show with us, trying to help us make sense of all of this. We've got about 5 minutes. We've got about 5 minutes, and then we have to go. We have to hand over to Ayobe for ideas. But I want to bring you into the conversation now. Let's talk. Oluwatosin Williams on Facebook says, I want to commend the Ukrainians for their steadfastness. The question of this war is a question of self-determination and self-preservation. I can only urge the NATO to put their words to action. I only hope Russia won't regret this. They may have advantage now, but in the long run, it's going to be a win for Ukraine. Well done, Sandra, and have a blissful weekend. Oluwatosin also says, where is Mr. Trump? A lot of Nigerians also think that Trump would have handled this differently.
Well, yes, he would have handled it differently. He would have supported Russia.
Yes,
because when he was president, he was asked about Russia's annexation of Crimea, and he said it was possible that he would recognize as valid and legitimate Russia's illegal conquest of Crimea. He has been on the table saying that. Then now, Trump has also said that this Russian invasion of Ukraine is genius. But again, like, it just comes down to that. Now, contrast that with Biden. By the way, I'm sure we heard it from the EU and from the NATO. Both organizations have praised Biden for his leadership. We have seen now the West has managed to gather the most extreme set of sanctions, economic sanctions against a nation state since World War One.
You even have China saying something.
Yes.
China is like, I don't do it.
And NATO and the EU are both saying that this would not have been possible with anyone other than Biden, because Biden did not bully them. He took an approach of listening, a fatherly approach in a way, of listening to them, understanding them, and basically negotiating to build consensus.
Right.
So if you get people who have in the past not been very like willing to come out of their shells, and you suddenly get them. I mean, before now we all said Germany would, I mean, you heard Cheta and I here last week, Germany will never agree to Nord Stream 2 being stopped.
Right.
Belgium will never agree to cutting Russia out of SWIFT. Both things have happened since the last time I was here.
Yeah.
And you had NATO and the EU both saying it's because of Joe Biden's leadership.
Let's come to the phone lines now. 99.3, hello. Thanks for calling.
I greet you, Sandra, and I greet you guys.
I greet you too.
There's no time, and there's a lot to unpack on this. My name is Kelvin.
Kelvin, use my time. Don't worry.
Well, I'm just so excited that a man as Zelensky, from a comic actor, he has become a wartime president. And the act of communication these days is fantastic from him. I'm so excited about that. I thought the Russians would just come and override these people, but the stiff resistance is spectacular. But how long can they hold on is key here. From a former KGB spy to a former comic actor. It's so interesting to see. I'm sad also for the people that are dying.
Yes.
A lot of people are dying. Civilians are dying. Russians are
on all sides.
That TV stations, you know, they're not saying that a lot of people are not aware of what is really happening in Russia, even though there are some protests in some parts of Russia. But it's so sad. The West should have done better anyway. The sanction to me is good, but it's a bit cosmetic. They should have gone further than that.
Okay.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for calling. 99.3, hello.
Hello.
Thanks for calling. What's your name?
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What's your name, sir?
My name is Samuel. I'm calling from Lekki.
Welcome. Go ahead.
Yes, I have a note. I want to come from another angle.
Okay.
Your guest there is not passing the right information.
Okay.
To some extent.
Okay.
When Kamala Harris went to Europe, why will it turn this idea of Ukraine can join in NATO, which is part of the reason why I'm not in support of what is happening there. I'm angry, seriously angry with what Putin did.
Okay.
But why would you why would you even make that statement in the first place?
What's the statement? Asking.
I saw it online not too long.
Uh-huh.
That even NATO, Ukraine can decide to even still join if they want to join.
But why can't they join? They're a sovereign nation.
Okay,
they can do what they want. Yeah.
Can I explain something to you?
Yeah.
Okay, now, as in Nigeria now, you have an enemy with maybe as your Ghana is your enemy, or your perceived enemy because you've been in rivalry in the past. Now, Benin Republic shares borders with you. It has almost the same firepower.
Let's wrap it up. We have like 2 minutes.
Okay. So what I'm trying to say now is that
make that point about Ghana and
yes. Would you allow your enemy that has the same firepower with you to come to your border and maybe
set up?
And set up maybe a nuke or something, or even equipment there.
All right. Thank you very much for calling. We've got just 30 seconds. Chief, we've addressed this earlier on.
Well, I'll just point out that for Ukraine to join NATO, all NATO members must agree. The US is just one member. There were at least 4 members who would never have allowed Ukraine to join before Russia did this. So has Russia done Ukraine or has Russia done themselves? That's one. The US has never changed its position. The US has constantly said Ukraine can join NATO, while the other members said no. That in itself is not reason enough for Russia to invade. These are the things that civilized nations go to the table and talk about, especially because Ukraine themselves are a sovereign nation who should have some chance to do. But what Russia has done now is gotten everybody who used to be on their side in the West to now be against them, making it even more likely that Ukraine joins NATO down the line, especially because now even the other countries who have seen that, look, even not join, and Ukraine couldn't even join NATO because they were in a border dispute with Russia over Crimea. So basically now everybody has said, oh, so even when you can't join NATO, but you been one join, Russia will attack you just because you been one. So what do you lose? Oh yeah, come and join NATO.
Chief, thank you so much for your time. You'll be back with us next week.
Yes, because this one no go end.
We are hoping that it would have ended by then. Thank you so much to Lani Adeton Ajaybe. She's a creative director at Lani. She gave me this gorgeous bag. I'm showing it to you on our live stream. So please check her out online. Check out her website, www.jolani.com. She gave this to me because she loves the show. She loves what we do. I'm really grateful. I'll show it to you again on Monday because I didn't have time to really get into it today. Find me on social media as Ezekwesili. Those are your hard facts, Lagos. Good night.
Join the conversation no matter where you are. Download our mobile app by searching Nigeria Info FM on the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. Also, get news updates in sports, entertainment, news, and current affairs right on the app. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
From dusk till dawn, we put you first with the best program.
Have you been vaccinated? Have you seen any magu-magu happen at the center where you were vaccinated?
It is said that a problem shared is half solved. When you admit first that there is a problem and then you share the problem, the understanding is perhaps you're reaching out to people who have an idea of how you would go about resolving the situation.
Tune in to the Morning Crossfire, the Daily Digest, What's Up Lagos, the Sunny Side, Hard Facts, Live and Dangerous with Daddy Freeze, the Chat Station, and in the world of sports, Femi and the gang has got you covered. Also, catch our exciting shows every weekend. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
Let me tell you about Public Square. There are several lines that meet other edges.
Youth of this country who are already in a disillusioned, disenchanted state.